Getting a book agent is something that people ask me about all the time. They think, should I get published? Should I do self-publishing? If I'm going to be published, do I need an agent to get my book in front of the right people? And so in this episode, we speak to Sarah Bullen, who is an amazing book publicist and a book agent based out of South Africa. And we're going to be talking all about the types of books that work well for getting an agent for, the whole publishing process and how it works, and how you can get your book in front of the big players at the huge companies like HarperCollins and Penguin's Random House and places like that. Absolutely fascinating episode. And we're talking about a topic that I don't know too much about. So I was really happy to learn myself about the book writing process, the book publishing process, and also getting an agent, how that all fits together. So it's a really fascinating episode, and I think you're going to learn loads from it. Hi everyone, and welcome to the Publishing Performance Show. I'm here with Sarah Bullen, who's a literary agent and writing coach. So Sarah, thank you for joining us.
Pleasure, lovely to be here.
So when I just introduced you, we mentioned you've got two jobs. You've got a literary agent and you're also a writing coach. So could you just explain a bit what each of those roles involves and how they complement each other? What's the difference between the two?
I think my role as a writing coach started back in 2007, which is quite some time ago, when I started working with authors. And one of my first jobs as kind of coaching authors was running the Harlequin Avon How to Write a Romance courses.
Right.
So that was really my beginning into this world of being a writing coach or mentor. So working as a writing coach really means I work with authors from the idea to get a book completed and ideally published. That's what writing coaching is. Now, being a literary agent is the completely other side of the railway line. Being a literary agent is really from when I receive an author with a completed book, it's getting them all the way to publication. And, the literary agency came second because it was by virtue of just my connections in the industry. Working with writers for 15 years, I just built a huge number of relationships and partnerships and connections. So it just became an organic byproduct of working in the book business for so long, just placing books. When you work with publishers, you say, oh, I think there's a book you may like. And that became really the agency side of the game. So they really are two very, very distinct and different roles. And sometimes the one merges into the other, where I take an author all the way through mentorship and get their book placed with the publisher. So that's the great golden prize.
Amazing. So how did you build up those contacts initially with the people in the writing world?
Yeah, so I think it's a by virtue of just a very long time. So initially, when I started out working with authors, I myself was writing. I was a journalist back in the day, and I was super lucky, Teddy. I got what all authors want. I was commissioned to write a book, right? Penguin came to me at the time and they said, there's this really funny book in Australia. We don't have it in our territory. Can you write a similar book with a similar topic? And that was really my first foray. So I was writing books and then I was editing books. And at the same time, publishers were saying, can you work with some of our authors? We can see they've got potential. Their book's not quite hitting the mark. So I started really working as what I'm going to call now, and in those days, really, it wasn't even a word, which was coaching, right? Coaching's become a very big word now. Back then, we kind of called it a developmental editor. So taking an author, either somebody they thought has got a great story, we want their book, it could be a celebrity, it could just be somebody who's lived through something, learned something, working with them to develop the story, because that's really the hard thing. And usually over a year, right? Working with an author over a year, and then ultimately getting the book to a solid place. So that was kind of the back then, and I'm talking from 2005 onwards. It wasn't a big industry like it is now. Self-publishing, indie publishing wasn't a thing. So I was always working with the bigger publishers who had an author in mind, wanted an author. And then the relationships grow from there. Publishing and publishers is a relationship. It's a personal business. As much as a publisher may sit at the head of an imprint in Penguin or Random House or Little Brown or one of the Sharman and Schuster, they have personalities and they like particular kinds of books. So it was really shepherding authors for a very long time, writing my own books, editing books, and just being in the business and developing lots of connections within the publishing industry.
Yeah,
before
amazing.
I actually had the idea to say, okay, well, I'm going to see if I can make a little bit of money out of actually selling authors' books. And we'll talk about, do I make money out of selling authors' books, and do authors make money out of selling books? I think we'll talk about that a little bit later as well.
Yeah, of course. What was it like working with Penguin as a writer?
So I've been with a number of publishers. So my first was actually called Penguin Random House Strike. So here it's an amalgamation in South Africa,
Yeah.
where I'm living at the moment. Fantastic. So I'll tell you what happened to me, and this is really how many books get published. And it's one way I highly, highly recommend authors get published is get a book commissioned, right? So luckily they came to me, but what I always say to authors coming in the nonfiction realm, pitch a publisher. Go to a
Hmm.
publisher with a fantastic concept, write a good publishing proposal, and see if they bite. Now, we can talk about what is a good publishing proposal. There's so many things out there, and I'll give you some ideas a little bit later. But let's say there's something that's topical. You've got access to a sports star. You've got access to a celebrity. Their story blows up, and you pitch a book on them. So that's what happened with me. I was commissioned, and I sent a pitch. They said, "How would you write this book if you were going to write it?" I sent them a 2-page book proposal. How ridiculous is that? In this day and age, we agonize over book proposals. I sent them a 2-page proposal. They said, "We love it. We love it. Can you deliver the book in 9 months?" So that was really it. I was given carte blanche, and I wrote the book in 6 months. But I do want to put a little caveat on that, because it's not everybody who manages to get a deal like that. I was a very established journalist. I was known as a humor columnist. So in the publisher's mind, they're not thinking, can this person deliver? They understand I was at that point a professional writer, which is what journalists actually are. They knew I could meet a deadline. So they weren't taking a risk on me. They understood tone, and they knew I could deliver the book. So they just scheduled it into their publishing book list.
Amazing.
Yeah. And the hands off. I just had to deliver it. Nothing else. They just, which is fantastic. Right?
Right.
Fantastic.
So it sounds like obviously you had those contacts which gave you that huge leg up at first, and now as a literary agent, that's kind of what you do as a job. That's what a literary agent does. Is that kind of am I in the right ballpark?
Well, what a literary agent does is they scout and they look for talented young, or not so young, authors, and who have a completed book project. And then what we do is we say, I think I can sell that book for you. So we'll sign an author that we think's got legs, in other words, can sell the books. And then I will, as an agent, spend a lot of time trying to place that particular book with a publisher. So there are two things that have to happen. That we have to have an author with a book. We've got to believe in the author, and we've got to have contacts in the publishing realm so that we feel we can sell that book to a publisher on the behalf of the author. A literary agent would then take a cut of that deal.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So it kind of works in the same way as like an actor's agent or someone like that.
It's exactly the same thing, right? An actor's agent has an actor, and they're trying to get them jobs all the time. It's a
Okay.
little bigger with an author, because you're not trying to get people jobs all the time. You're trying to get them one deal.
Yes. Right.
And
Okay.
it's, yeah, it's exactly that. And then we're going to take a commission. So what does a literary agent take of the commission? Generally, we would take 20, between 15 and 20% of the author's income.
Yeah.
The author's
Okay.
income. Very similar in any agenting field, a sports agent, literary agent, talent agent, model agent. It's going to be very, very similar, because you're actually negotiating and shepherding a deal for the author. And we can talk a little bit about how that may play out. What is 25% or 15%, and what actually may an author make? And
Yeah.
just to land again and remind your listeners that a literary agent would only come into play when you are being, as an author, placed with a traditional publisher. Often in the US, we talk about the big four publishers, but generally across the world, there's a lot more than four publishers. There's thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of publishers. So it would only be a deal placed at a traditional publisher, as opposed to an indie publisher or a hybrid publisher.
Yeah. Right. Okay. That makes sense. So before we get on to how the literary agent works, could we have a talk about the sort of books that would need a literary agent. My first question was, when you're looking for people to represent, are you usually looking for someone who has written books before and has got some history of selling books, or is it very okay for it to be your first book and you're just pitching out there?
Sure, a really great question. So before we even get into that conversation, I want to separate our two different genres of books because this is hugely important. We handle them completely differently. And the one is novels, and that is all novels, from children's books to young adult to any novel genre, and nonfiction. So fiction and nonfiction are handled incredibly differently. The first thing is we are generally, truth be told, looking for new or debut authors in the novel realm.
Mhm.
And in the nonfiction realm, we are looking for something a little bit different. We are looking for authors who can sell. In fact, let me put it in a broad term. Any agent who is looking for an author to bring into their stable to represent this author, they're really looking for that simple and single thing. They're looking for an author who can sell, because publishing is a sales industry. As much as we write books with our heart and with our soul, and we spend years often planning the book and years writing the book, and we have all these hopes and dreams, at the end of the day, when we get down to the nitty gritty of what is publishing, publishing is a business in which books are bought and sold. So in this business side of publishing, we are looking as agents for books that we think have got potential to get sold and for buyers. So that's really important. It doesn't mean that we're not going to look at an already published author. Let me put it this way. If J.K. Rowling came up to me and said, Sarah, I can't get on with my agent anymore. She's driving me mad. Can I sign with you? I mean, I would just be shouting from the rooftops because it's a guaranteed, right? But that very seldom happens in the world of literary agencies. A literary agent has a very long-term relationship with an author. You bet on a younger author and you build their career slowly and over time.
Right.
So anything goes, and we're always looking for one thing, which is authors whose books we can place
Right. What do
and
you mean by
sell.
that?
So books we can place at a publisher, which goes back to that word sell. Can we sell your book? So if you come to me and you may be the most incredible person, you may be completely fantastic, I love you to death, but you've written a novel in an unsellable genre. You don't even know what you've written, for example. I say, is
Yeah.
it a crime? Is it a romance? You don't know. You say it's a coming of age. And I say, no, sweet, no. We all books are coming of age. I want to know, what is it? What is the plot driver of your book? So we have all those questions we want to know. And Teddy, the thing about writing is we're moving into the domain of the written word. So this is different to anything else. You can be a fantastic actor, you can be a wonderful speaker. I can love you personally. But when it comes down to it, all I'm going to judge you on is the manuscript you give me. And that becomes our benchmark here. So I look at authors and I look at what they send me in writing, and is it good? Can I sell it?
Yeah. Right. That's interesting because I spoke to a guy called Dakota Kraut a couple of weeks ago, and he has a publishing house, but it's in a really niche genre. It's called Lit RPG. It's like games, but in books. And his books sell a lot. But obviously, that has not mass appeal. That's very much a niche appeal. So what you're thinking is to get a literary agent with someone like you, you'd be looking at more of the more not generic, but the more widespread genres that you see on bookshelves normally.
Yes, pretty much. And we're going to call those trade books. So trade books are books you would find in a general bookshop. Pretty much, you're right. However, there are also agents and equally publishers who specialize. So I don't actually even know what that is that he that he works within. But you absolutely but you're going to find publishers who have a very tight special interest. For example, business to business books, academic books, books that go into specialist areas. So of course, there are publishers who work within those realms. And equally, then there are going to be agents who will see that market and work within that. And don't underestimate the power of a niche market. So Books that are very widely bought or sold are special interest books. It could be, for example, I'm going to completely make this up, about within the world of yachting, how to build a yacht by hand, right? It's not for
Yeah.
everybody, but you are going to find that there are specialist publishers in the DIY realm, do-it-yourself realm, who this is fantastic for them. So it's always a question of looking so we're speaking to authors a lot in this podcast and in general. When you're writing a book, the question to ask yourself is, who is my reader? Who's going to read this book? What are they looking for? And that's really important, because publishing is a business in which you're not writing for yourself anymore, because that's a
Yeah.
diary, right? When you write a book and you want others to read it, you're continually asking yourself the question is, why am I writing this? Who may read it? What may they get out of it?
Yeah. Amazing. So when you just mentioned you get sent a lot of manuscripts. Now, as an agent, what are the things you look for when you're evaluating manuscripts? So can we look at this in two ways? So you've already mentioned kind of the genres you look at, but let's look at some of the practical things that you look for in manuscripts as well.
Yeah. Right, exactly that. So I'm gonna, again, I'm going to separate it out, because I cannot overestimate the fact that they are just different things.
Yeah.
And the first thing to just really remind listeners is that if you are an author and you're looking for either an agent or a publisher, the process is very similar. To absolutely know that the person is interested in what you've written. So please do your research. Don't send me, for example, children's books, because on our website it very clearly specifies the kinds of books I look at and I'm interested in. Mine are non-fiction. But so go and do your research first. Do not send a novel to a publisher who publishes non-fiction. And even more than that, get incredibly tight. So the first thing we're looking for when we get a book in our emails, which is kind of how books work, it's either submitted via platform like Submittable. The first thing, or it's emailed to us, the first thing we look at is super simple. You can pick it up in the body, in the subject line, is, do they know what I represent or what I work within? Do they know their genres? Okay. If you've sent me a sports book, I'm just going to send that back immediately to my assistant. You'll get a thank you. We do not submit. We do not look at sports books, children's books, new adult books, any of those kind of genres. So that's the first thing, is, do they know what they've written, and are they clear that I'm the right person for them? I'm going to speak about nonfiction first, because many authors who are submitting are nonfiction authors. So the second thing I'm going to look at immediately when a book comes into my inbox is I'm going to look at, well, what is it, right? What have they written? This is an obvious question. And the first thing that's going to want to grab me is the title. Is it something I'm interested in? I'm going to grab one of my author's books at the moment in front of me. The Billionaire Mindset. Now, imagine that comes in your inbox, the Billionaire Mindset, okay? Firstly, that's going to tick a box, right? Because what is this book about? It's about making money. Yes, that ticks my nonfiction box. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at their query letter. The query letter is the email that kind of introduces their book very quickly to me. And it'll say what is essentially, I'm going to expect your back cover blurb. So I'm going to read that. I'm going to think, is that interesting? Is it well crafted? Is it engaging? Can a reader see that this is going to add value? And the next critical thing I'm going to look at is, who are they? Who's the person who's written this nonfiction book? Are they a celebrity? Are they interesting? Do they know what they're talking about? Are they an expert in their field? If I don't know who they are, and this is before I've even opened their book proposal, if I don't know who they are, I'm going to do the most obvious thing. I am going to Google them. I'm going to type their name directly into Google, and I'm going to see what comes up about them. If nothing comes up, I may open their book proposal. If a lot comes up and I can see they're somebody, I'm going to be more interested. And then the next step.
So I was going to say, for a non-fiction person, so that would obviously be a website, but you're probably thinking LinkedIn would need to be saying what you're about as well, possibly maybe other social medias.
Well, this is a really interesting thing, and it's a question of a lot of debate at the moment, is, what do we look at? Is it their Instagram? Is it their TikTok? Is it their LinkedIn? Is it their Facebook presence? the first thing we are going to want to encounter is the fact you got a website, without a doubt, because
Right.
LinkedIn, you can have a lot of followers. You can have a lot of people clicking and liking on Instagram. It doesn't necessarily mean a huge amount in terms of book sales.
Yep.
We have not yet really made a correlation between likes or followers and book sales. We are interested, however, in, do you have a website that shows that you're somebody who's known in this field? So that's number one. Yes, I'm going to go potentially look at your LinkedIn. I'm also going to assume that in your book proposal, you've kind of hyped that up a little bit for me. So if you're a great social media influencer, yeah, you're going to have that in your book proposal. You're going to say, I've got X number of followers, 45,000 followers, listen to my podcast. Yes, it's going to make a little bit of a difference as well. It's all going to factor into the fact that we think you are a good potential publishing bet. So, but I like to, and I'm not saying I'm old school, but your website means a lot.
Hmm.
So it's where people are
Yeah.
going to go to. It's where you're going to convert people from likes to they follow you. They actually sign up to your emails. They're interested in what you have to say.
Yeah.
So we
It's a really
do
good
rate
point
that.
because, yeah, people don't, I think a lot of people, non-fiction authors, well, anyone who's new, they're a bit scared of making a website because it feels like a big project, but it doesn't have to be. We spoke to a guy called Stuart Grant a few weeks ago. He was one of our first episodes, and he creates author websites. And for less than £1,000, you can get a really, really nice looking website that showcases you. So if you are serious about your book, I think you're probably right. That is definitely a great investment.
Teddy, can I add that that is critical in the realm of non-fiction? But this is
Yep.
not that critical in the realm of novels. So we're still on that
Right.
non-fiction author side.
Yep.
If you've written a novel, I'm not interested in who you are. I'm interested in something completely different when I get your book.
Yep. Great. So that's nonfiction. So we're really looking at your reputation, your online presence. Do you know your stuff? Can you provably say what's in the book is what you are talking about in real life? But for fiction, you're saying it's a slightly different process.
Completely that. So when we get a
Yeah.
fiction manuscript, and again, a reminder, I don't represent fiction currently, but I would pass a fiction manuscript on. So when we get a fiction manuscript in our inbox, it's a completely different process. In the realm of fiction, you are not interested in who the person is at all. You're
Yeah.
looking for a number of things. The first thing is, are they unbelievably clear on their genre? In other words, in the body of the email, in the query letter, have they literally listed it? This is crime subcategory forensics, or romance subcategory paranormal, for example. So we want that level of specificity. So we want to
Mhm.
know that they know what they've written. The second thing we're looking for is story. We want in the body of the email to feel, ooh, this is interesting. This is a story I want to read. And it's very similar to our buying process when we go into a bookshop and we're looking for a book. Even though people in this day and age very seldom go into bookshops, the thing you're going to do is you're going to pick up a book and you're going to look at the back cover blurb. That is that hook we want. We want to know that we're in, that we like the character. Firstly, that there's a hero, that there's a character that we can identify. And secondly, that there is a story. Okay, that's important. So we need that in the covering letter, your query letter. And then with what we do want then, if as an agent, as a publisher, if that's interesting and engaging enough, we're going to click on your attachment to the email. And in the attachment, what is expected is a novel synopsis. And in that
Mhm.
novel synopsis, and this is a reminder to your novelist, it's a 3 to 5 pager that breaks down the plot of your novel in a way that's exciting, engaging, but also really spells out what your book's about. So, in addition, with a novel submission, I do like to see the first 3 chapters. And
Yep.
the reason is a novel synopsis is a strange thing. It's kind of a blow by blow of your plot, and it doesn't give the feeling of the book. We like to see the beginning of the book, and we know, and readers know, very often within the first 3 chapters of a book if you've got a story and if we want to read more. So in which case, as an agent or as a publisher, if we feel they're on genre, they know this They know this kind of book. They've read a lot of these books. They know all the conventions. They've hit all the notes. We kind of like their first 3 chapters. It's in a genre we actually publish or represent. We may then mail back and say, we like it. Can you send the full manuscript?
Yep.
But that may take a good 3 months to even get that email reply. And that's the important thing for authors who are querying to know, is that may take at least 3 months even to get to that point.
Yeah. I guess they've got to read the book and make comments on it and things like that.
It's going to take 3 months for even to get that letter that says, we've read your little blurb, we like it, can you send more? And the reason is, and I really want to stress this, publishing is a slow business. When you submit to a publisher or an agent, they're not necessarily going to read it immediately. They may get a number of submissions. It may go through their assistant, which happens generally. The assistant will vet them. They will immediately reply to manuscripts that are way off base, wrong genre, wrong market. Clearly the author doesn't know what they're writing about, or just it's got glaring errors. They may reply quite quickly and say, thank you so much, but we're not going to take you on at this moment, or we don't represent in this genre, or this is not our cup of tea, whatever they may say. But generally what happens is the assistant's going to gather, let's say 20 emails that are solid, that maybe the publisher is going to look at. They're in the right genre, they look pretty good. And then at that point, maybe once a month, we'll sit with the publisher and say, okay, I've got a few to look at. So already you're a few months down the line. But as an author submitting, this is very stressful. You're expecting an email back quite quickly. So my one word of advice to many authors is wait it out a little bit. Give it 3 months. If there's been no reply, do nudge. Say, hi, I'm just double checking. Did you get this? Have you got any feedback? Because one of the most common things authors will tell you, Teddy and me, is they never got back to me. I've sent it to 20 publishers. I've got 1 reply. It's really distressing. And you're kind of sitting as an author in this limbo of not really knowing what on earth's going on. Have they even received your book? Is it so bad they've just deleted it? So lots of questions in the mind of an author. And I always want to remind authors, it's a big unwieldy business. It takes a lot of time, and it may be they even didn't see your email.
Yeah, that is. I've heard that a lot. That authoring, especially for novels, is quite a slow business. Whereas I think in the non-fiction world, it sounds like stuff moves a bit quicker. Maybe just because of the nature of the people you're dealing with, it's like quite high agency business people who are writing these books. So it's maybe a bit of push.
It can be. So, and yet it can be very quick. So it can be quick and then slow as well. So I'm going to give you an example. One of my authors, she was actually doing a mentorship with me, and she's absolutely passionate about the oceans. And she gathered a list of essays together about a very specific topic, and I'm not going to give it away, within the oceans and within climate change. And she interviewed a whole lot of big influencers in it. And she really is not a celebrity. She just has an absolute passion for the ocean. The book was she spent a year writing the book. It's together. And I just happened to be in a meeting, a lunch with a publisher who mentioned that her husband has a special interest in the oceans, and he actually works in the oceans. And I said to her, I've got a book you may be interested in. So I took this author, I quickly mailed the book through to the publisher. I had 1 or 2 quick meetings. They commissioned the book. They signed a publishing contract immediately. This all happened within 3 weeks. And yet they said to my author, we love 60% of the book. 40% of it we want changes. We want these people included, these people excluded. We're going to give you 9 months to fix it, deliver it, and it's in our publishing book list in 24 months' time. In 2 years, this book's going to come out. So,
Right.
Interesting, right? Because it shows us a few things. Number one, publishers are on the lookout for good books. So are agents like myself. Secondly, it's no rush. It's very seldom a book's going to get out in less than 6 to 8 months. So it's a very forward-looking business. We're commissioning already. Now we're sitting in the end of 2024. For 2025 books, they're sold. They're already, the book lists are full. So we're looking 2026. So it's a very forward-looking business. So authors also need to have a foresight with that. It's a futuristic thing. Think when you're writing a book and pitching a book, what is going to be on trend, contemporary, and exciting in a year, 2 years' time?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. That must be quite difficult. So when non-fiction authors, so we've gone into quite a lot of detail about the fiction people writing their emails and sending to you. What does a non-fictions person, do they give you any manuscripts at all usually when they want to work with you, or is it just literally that email and cover a query letter?
Well, so that's the next step. So this is the first, let's say that when you're pitching either a literary agent or publisher, it's a series of emails. And the very first would be just that. The query letter, ideally attached to that is your full book proposal in the nonfiction realm. And in that book proposal, it's really what I like to describe as like a little bit of a business plan. It's got the bigger argument of your book, a big discussion of who you are and why you are going to sell this book and promote this book and do talks and be fabulous. It's also got sort of a bit of a market analysis. So we want to know similar titles, the big names in your genre, when your book is stocked in the bookshop, next to whose books is it going to sit? So we really want an understanding of how we may sell your book, where do we position it? And then also in that kind of document, your book proposal, we also want to see your contents list. So we want to glance down. We want to really get a feeling of your book. It may be that this entire book is not written yet. Going back to this Oceans book that we are working on at the moment, the book's not complete. The publisher wanted input. But in the nonfiction realm, we pretty much want a good portion, about 80% of it written, so we can see a little bit of the book. And, then it's a little bit of a negotiation because publishers know what sells. I'm just going to be straight up with this. So when they or agents are looking at your book, they're making a judgment call. They're doing a little bit of a market analysis. They're asking themselves, okay, how many of these books do we think we could sell in 3 months, 8 months, 2 years? And there is a break even that a publisher wants to know that they are going to sell. So they're looking at your network, they're looking at the trends in the market, they're looking at, is this a really topical and exciting issue? Who are you competing with in this nonfiction realm? They're going to look at things like, are there big names in this business? So if you're coming out with a cookbook that's, let's call it, suddenly you come up with a concept, 3 things on a plate, they're going to do a little bit of a market analysis and see, oh, but Jamie Oliver did a book like that. So that's going to pull buyers into that and maybe away from you. So we're looking at lots of things. If all of that kind of looks solid, what would happen in the nonfiction realm is they want to see a few of your chapters, and then a negotiation will start. They may have a call with you. They may talk out your book a little bit. They may want to see the whole book if it's written. And then what could happen, and this is what everybody wants to happen, is the publisher could say, or the agent could say, I'm going to sign you and offer you a publishing contract.
Right.
Yes, we think your book's going to sell. Yes, we like you. We think you're an author who's going to make things happen. So we can see that you're going to go out, you're going to do radio interviews, you're going to do book clubs, you're going to speak at, I don't know, AA meetings. We know you're an engaged author, which is really, really important. We can see you're going to sell books, and we're going to offer you a publishing deal. So that's what every author is looking for. Of course, very few authors get it because it's a highly, highly competitive environment. But that said, it happens all the time. Publishers are in the business of looking for good books.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really good advice, especially on the non-fiction stuff. Just creating that online presence to build your reputation, I think, is really important. I think it's a step that a lot of people maybe forget about. And it could just be a case of making sure your social media and your website are up to date and like making you look as good as possible. So yeah, great advice. Now, what if someone is, what's the main advantages? So I know you've got your contacts in the industry. So is the main advantage of working with a literary agent to get that in with a publisher?
Look, exactly that. That would be why you would sign with a literary agent. And in many countries, you cannot access a publisher unless you go through an agent. The UK, there's very few publishers that take unsolicited manuscripts. They work directly with agents. The big ones would only work with agents. Smaller ones may accept a submission directly from an author. US as well, you're going to have the same dynamic there where your big publishers don't accept submissions from authors. They only work with their trusted agents because they know that if so and so says, I've got a good book for you, it is a good book. However, there are smaller publishers in which an author can send an unsolicited manuscript. They work directly with authors. They're looking for new authors. So as an author, be on the lookout for that. Do your due diligence, do your homework, go and do your research. Who can I submit to? And you're looking directly for unsolicited, right?
Mm.
So that's the first thing. And then you would want an agent because they take that work out of it for you. I also want to add that just because you sign with an agent, just because an agent likes you, they think they can get you a book deal, it doesn't mean they will. And I personally have had books that I thought were fantastic. I believed in them. The author was dynamic. I was convinced publishers would take these books, and I spent over a year trying to get a book sale, and it didn't happen. So even agents can find a publisher impenetrable. I've had instances where publishers have just never even replied to me, and that happens all the time. So even agents get that. Um, so as an author and as somebody looking to get published, you're going to exhaust all your options. You're going to look for agents. You're going to look for publishers. And at the same time, you're going to hold the possibility open that if you don't get your book placed within the traditional publishing arena, you may have to investigate independent publishing, self-publishing,
Mhm.
hybrid publishing
Right. Yeah.
at the same
That,
time.
so, what are the sort of criteria that you look for when you're looking at a manuscript specifically for your business? Obviously, it's non-fiction, but is there any particular things you're like, yeah, that is a book that I want to represent?
Yeah. Yeah, and yes, there is indeed. So, and it really comes down to how an agent chooses books, how a publisher chooses books. They like particular kinds of books. It very much is a personal industry. So as much as I know and I can guesstimate what books may sell, I have a special interest in some kinds of books. So I like to work, and I'm going to give you an example. I like business books because I used to be a financial journalist. So I like books that either speak about cutting edge business or show people how to either make money, save money, or reinvent or reimagine money. So that's a special interest to myself. And then I've got an interest in kind of mind, body, spirit books, and a special interest in kind of personal, gritty memoir. So it's personal, right? And equally with publishers, you are going to find they like particular things, much like the publisher who's picked up the book about the ocean. So we're individuals. So it's the same as readers. Your book is not going to appeal to everybody. It's for particular people. So you need, as an author, to find the agent, the publisher that likes your kind of thing. If you've written a sports book, a book, and I get this all the time, these are great books, books about sporting joke books. These are great books. People love them, and they're great gift books over December. But if you send that book to me, it's going to go a little bit over my head. It's not my beat.
Mm.
You need to find a publisher that's done a series of joke books that are sold as gift books over December. So the thing about starting your pitching process as an author is you really it's like dating, right? And I'm going to liken it to a dating app like Tinder. You're looking to match with somebody, and you need to see that you've got similar interests and that you like the same things. And that's really what it is like for a publisher, for an author pitching a publisher, bearing in mind that publishers are not fools. So they also can see a really good book that's going to crack out sales. So, and I want to stress that, let's say you send the book to me. It's not my cup of tea. I don't represent sporting books, but I absolutely know it's good. I'm going to take your book and forward it on to a colleague who may. So we have particular personal interests, but also there's a commercial knowledge that says, okay, this guy's pretty solid. He's big. He's doing 45 talks a year. He's running master classes. 500,000 people signed up as his last gig. He's interesting. I don't do that sort of thing, but I'm going to send it to a colleague. So bear in mind, and the reason I want to stress this is that when it's, and this is very important, that when you query an agent or a publisher, do it formally. Do your query letter and do it well. Attach all the right documents because it's a forwarding business. And I want to put this like, we forward emails to a colleague who's better placed to handle that. So make sure it's well done. Everything's there. It's not a mess. You've got the right documents, because what's going to happen is your query or your email will be passed. And
Yeah.
it's sort of a point I try and make. Do things formally. Don't like WhatsApp somebody, because. And very often I also say to somebody that they hit me up with a little WhatsApp. I say, thanks so much. It's interesting. Send me a formal query and I'm going to pass it on to the right person. So
Yeah.
that's a reminder. So books get passed around, queries get passed around. It's a little bit like your CV. Your friends may, somebody may say, oh, I'm not, but I know a friend who's hiring. I'm going to forward your CV to them.
Yeah.
So just bear
Yeah.
that in mind.
And this is quite interesting because obviously you're the other half of what we talked about before is you're also a writing coach. And so because you talk about this thing of things getting passed around and it's not always going to the right place. That's why you're being a writing coach is quite good, because you're starting that beginning part of the process with people so that they can do things in the right way. So what does it look like working with someone like you as a writing coach?
Yeah, well, you've exactly summed it up in a way, because when you work with a writing coach, or let me frame it like this. I like to run mentorships. So this is when people begin and they come, I want to write a book. Okay, they begin with the idea. Maybe they've written a bad first draft. They've dabbled in it. Maybe they wrote it 10 years ago. That happens all the time. So a mentoring process is taking the person and really starting with the question, where do you want this book to end up? Right. So we're getting quite commercial from the beginning. We're asking, where do you want this book to be? Is this for you? Is this for your family? Do you want this in the bookshops? Is this in indie publishing? And really, we work backwards, because if people come and tell me they want to be published, they want to be in bookshops, it's a very different conversation for somebody who wants to record their life for their family. So we start to work out, well, what do you want to do with this book? And if you want to be published, there's some ways you write books. There's some things you need to know. There's some rules of engagement. Let's get that right first. Let's get you clear about what you're writing, very clear. Let's get you segmented in the correct genre. Let's know you understand the conventions of the genre, the obligatory scenes you need in a crime, a romance, a young adult, a new adult, that you know the arc of that plot. And in a nonfiction, you know what your chapter list looks like. And then it's really pushing people to get the book written. Your first draft, which is really, as most authors know, a rough assembly. We get that, word counts, first draft. Then we do second draft. Then we look at the market again and go, okay, well, hold on a seckie. You've taken 2 years to write the book. Things have changed. Can you tighten this so it's more on track, on target, on trend? It's more contemporary. It's more edgy. And that's really the rewrite process. So continually working with authors who have a view to being published ultimately, and really honing and refining that process with them over a long, slow time.
Yep. So when with your mentorship, you don't actually just focus on nonfiction, though, do you? You focus on fiction and nonfiction people, whoever wants to write their book.
Correct. So I have two
Yeah.
streams, and then within the, yeah, and they would happen. They're very different courses. With a novel, we push you to write it in 4 months, and then do your revision, aiming to kind of have a book within a year. And that I have very solid novel mentors who you may be assigned a specific mentor. In the nonfiction realm, it's a little bit more hands-on. Nonfiction books are really consistently built and worked on in a very different way to a novel. Novel is creativity and wonderment and engagement and entertaining readers. A nonfiction reader is looking for something different, and it's knowing the difference and delivering it. So there's just
Mm.
total different streams.
Yeah, definitely. No, my books are all nonfiction, and generally, nonfiction books are much more focused around keywords, what people are searching for, and they want the answer to a question. The reason you read a book about how to be more productive is because you probably feel you aren't more productive, and so you want to fix that. Whereas if you're reading Sherlock Holmes, you're probably just looking for a bit of escapism rather than to learn how to solve a crime. It's it's slightly different ways of
Right.
looking at it.
And really it comes down to, and there really are two reasons people buy books, and it really speaks to that. And the first is to be entertained, and the second is to be informed. And that is the break between novels and nonfiction. Your only job as a novelist is to entertain people. To take a reader who's sitting in a flat in Tokyo, in New York City, where they haven't seen, the outside of a computer screen for 6 months, to take people anywhere in the world and to rip them out of their lives and to take them on a madcap journey that's going to keep them engaged and turning the page and excited and in a completely different world. Whereas, as you exactly identified, the domain of nonfiction is the domain of information. People are looking to be informed about something.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
They're either
Definitely.
looking to be challenged or educated or something like that. So they want information. They're in the quest for information, even if it's wrapped up in a very entertaining way. We like that as well. So memoir tries to straddle that. You try and entertain the person, but actually they're reading the book because they're interested in what happened to you.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's a really good summary of it. I know on your website you've got some different mentorship packages. So the writersroom.co.za is the website people need to go to. Tell us about these packages and then what people can expect from them if they were to take them up.
Yeah. Well, generally, I like to work on a long-term mentorship, and we have one start two a year. Generally, I start in January, and there's one starting in October, which is now, pretty much now. And either people go on a 4-month madcap push to get their first draft out. So there's a 4-month mentorship, and then there's a year-long mentorship. And it is really for either novelists or nonfiction. You just tick into the different streams where you are coached very clearly via an email system. I don't like videos. I do not recommend that people go and waste their time going onto the internet. In fact, the impulse and the push on these mentorships is to get offline, get off all these things, get a task, sit and write, push yourself through it. It's a big ask to write a book, and you would know, having written one, it's a big deal. It's a year-long commitment. It's like becoming a doctor. It's writing a PhD. So there's a huge amount you need to put away to get rid of in order to bring this into your life. So it's really working consistently over long term to get a good book written.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, thank you so much for today. I think there's been so much for people to take away about working with a literary agent. I found it so interesting. You're the first literary agent I've properly spoken to. So it's been really interesting to hear about that process and how it works, because a lot of people would just think, I want to go self-publishing, I'm just going to do that. But actually there's a lot of benefits to being published and going down that route. And if you are thinking about writing a book, it's definitely something you should consider if you want to publish wide, I think. So if people want to get in contact with you, what's the best place to do that?
They can really look me up at thewritingroom.co.za or internationalwritingretreats.com, which is, I run a number of international writing retreats, and both of those you will be able to get hold of me.
Brilliant. And you're on social media as well?
You'll find me on social media, on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn.
Perfect. We'll put links to all those in the show notes. But yeah, thank you so much for today. That's been really interesting. Just the final question we have is, what's a book that you've been reading that you think everyone should be reading?
I am going to choose a book. It's actually by one of my authors, and her name is Colleen Dolan, and it's called The Ghost Ship. And this is a book it's written by an American woman, and her daughter Chelsea was a DJ, and she, along with another 36 young people, burned to death in a warehouse fire during a nightclub in Seattle. And she's written a book about it. It's really a sensational book. It's a sensational book because it really takes us by this incredible step-by-step journey of the night of the fire, the unpacking of the trial, and just understanding a family's torment of getting this news and also having to sit through 2 years of this incredible testimony, trying to understand what happened on that night. And I recommend this book because of the incredible way it's been put together. and the incredible, unbelievably riveting journey it takes the reader on. It's just come out in the US and it's available on Amazon, Kindle, and in bookshops. It's called The Ghost Ship.
Sounds amazing.
by
That sounds like a
Colleen
really
Dolan.
Colleen Dolan. Great. I'll check that out. That sounds like quite an unusual book in a good way. It sounds like something I haven't read before, so I'll definitely check that one out. Brilliant. Well, thank you so much, Sarah, for joining us. I've really enjoyed that chat, and hopefully we'll speak again soon. Thank you so much for tuning into the Publishing Performance podcast. I really hope you found today's episode inspiring. I love chatting to authors, writers, and people in the publishing world. Now, just before we wrap up, let me tell you about Publishing Performance, the #1 platform for authors who want to increase Amazon book sales, but are not really sure where to start. Now, this show is all about helping you to sell more books. And if you're looking to boost your publishing game and to maximize your book's potential on Amazon, then Publishing Performance is designed to help authors just like you to grow your readership and to reach a much wider audience. Now, I know that Amazon ads can be slightly complicated, which is why Publishing Performance is like having a personalized ad account manager to create your ad campaigns, to choose your best keywords, and to make adjustments in real time. Now, if you're investing in ads, you really want to make sure that your investment is being used effectively. And Publishing Performance does just that. It aims to make your budget go further, improve your organic rank, and target keywords more effectively. Just go to publishingperformance.com to get started with Amazon ads for just $1. Thank you so much for tuning into the Publishing Performance podcast. I really hope you found today's episode inspiring. I love chatting to authors, writers, and people in the publishing world. Now, just before we wrap up, let me tell you about Publishing Performance, the #1 platform for authors who want to increase Amazon book sales, but are not really sure where to start. Now, this show is all about helping you to sell more books. And if you're looking to boost your publishing game and to maximize your book's potential on Amazon, then Publishing Performance is designed to help authors just like you to grow your readership and to reach a much wider audience. Now, I know that Amazon ads can be slightly complicated, which is why Publishing Performance is like having a personalized ad account manager to create your ad campaigns, to choose your best keywords, and to make adjustments in real time. Now, if you're investing in ads, you really want to make sure that your investment is being used effectively. And Publishing Performance does just that. It aims to make your budget go further, improve your organic rank, and target keywords more effectively. Just go to publishingperformance.com to get started with Amazon ads for just $1.